Have you ever heard the sound of freedom? Have you ever heard the sound of freedom?
You're listening to The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak, connecting the reality of the gospel to the grit of life. You can support the podcast and pick up some sweet Flipside swag at www.patreon.com/Noah Filipiak.
Welcome to this Beyond the Battle testimony hybrid episode with The Flip Side. I am happy to be here with my friend Ethan. Ethan, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your story.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'm going to kick it over to you, Ethan. Just share with us, however you want to word it, your story, your testimony up to this point as it relates to sexual sin, unwanted sexual behavior. I'll just let you dive right in.
Sure. Well, thank you, Noah. I appreciate it. And the ministry you're doing, it's absolutely fantastic. I was just thinking here while you were talking that really, I have to give God all the glory for this and His grace. He has been so forgiving and patient in my life, and His grace has just been renewed every day. So that is one thing that has been really important, and that I want others to hear as well, is that God is so good and so full of grace, and can just show up in amazing ways. But like many guys, my struggle started very young. I found some sort of Playboy magazine when I was, I believe, in junior high, just in some trash can on the side of a path, and I saw it, and that kind of was my introduction. And I was with some friends, and we kind of laughed about it, but then there was something that just sucked me into that. I just something inside, like, I have to see that again. And I remember going back that night to pick it up again and looking at it, and then, trying to throw away and then grabbing it back out. It was just like this absolute addiction. And that kind of started what would be in many, many years, decades of just a struggle with purity as far as thoughts, whether it was a Victoria's Secret magazine or some kind of lingerie, that something that came in the mail, or something that I saw on TV, or even trying to like tune in after hours late at night. I mean, then again, this is back in the 90s, late 90s, but trying to find some like sort of blurred out X-rated show at night that you could still sort of get through cable, but not really. And but it involved masturbation and just thoughts that I just couldn't seem to escape. And I kept thinking to myself, every day I would just say, God, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. I got to beat this. And just kept going and kept going. And I just kept thinking to myself, when will this ever end? When will I ever get on top of this? Because as a teenager as well, you're raging hormones, and I was just like addicted, like sexual thoughts, like all the time. Um, and this was while I was a very solid, committed Christian as well, and involved in prayer life and reading scripture and going to church. And it was like I had this dual life.
Mm.
And I mean, that went on through college. And then as the internet got more big, and as soon as you got into the college era too, there were all these intranets and different things that people could share, and just accessing it. And you would hear pornography on the dorm floors. You would hear, I mean, it just was rampant. I mean, college was crazy. And then afterwards, in regular single life, I mean, same thing. You get a computer, you have alone time, you come back from work, you're tired, you're frustrated. It was so easy. And somewhere early on, a friend suggested, I think, Covenant Eyes. And just like I've heard from many people, I turned it on, turned it off, turned it on, turned it off, and it didn't really work that well. And all this time, my faith life, in many ways was very strong, and I had some incredible periods of growth in my Christian faith, and desire to serve and evangelism, and so many things like that. But it just was something I would get these periods of time I'd go without it, and then I'd be sucked back in. And then I married, and I let my wife know this. I didn't give her all the details, because I felt like it hurt her every time this came up. But I mean, this went on for years and years of our marriage, off and on, off and on, off and on. And throughout time, it went a little bit longer, but still, especially with smartphones, would access things, whether on Facebook, YouTube, I mean, you know it. It's everywhere, and it's so easy. And I would try all these things. I would have accountability partners. I would have it just wouldn't fully click. Um, and then it all kind of led up to about a year ago. Um, uh, I had some very close family loss, and it just was a really difficult time. And I remember looking at something one night, and I was just absolutely around this time, I was absolutely ashamed of myself, and probably more than I've ever been in my entire life. I came home and I was just wrecked. And then I think I actually met you, Noah, at a meeting, and you talked about your book and your ministry. And I was just like, I picked up that book, and I'm telling you, at that minute, I can't even I can't describe it except for God. It was just like God turned a switch in my life. I read that book, and I got into it hook, line, and sinker. And I said, enough is enough after all of these years, and I committed to it. And it's been about 10 months so far that I've not seen any pornography, any kind of, bad images. I guess, there again, you maybe a little something here or there sneaked in, but basically it's been an incredible freeing time of freedom that I've never experienced in my life before. And it's just been absolutely incredible. And that doesn't mean I don't struggle. It doesn't mean I don't have hard days. It doesn't mean I don't think about going back sometimes to look at that stuff. But yeah, I mean the ministry you did and connecting with guys and getting accountability partners and reading through this material and just really seeing it for what it is, um, just really a little fire under me, and that's kind of where I'm at today.
Wow, I love hearing that. That's the work of God in your life and the Beyond the Battle book. Talk a little bit about, you did the 7-week group
Yep.
with us, and then you've been active in our online
Yep.
alumni community as well. And just talk about some of that ongoing work, and just even to clarify with listeners from when you said, I'll clarify it. You don't have to if you don't want to. When you said some things, sneak in because you had said I hadn't seen any, like kind of bad images. Part of that process for us in our alumni journey is once you've stopped looking at pornography, there's all of these, I don't know what you'd even call them, like these oh, the scent, like it's a temptation, right? But there's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's even I'll be reading like an ESPN article,
Yep.
and the bottom of the article is thumbnails of some could be just a woman in a dress that's very provocative, or a bathing suit or something. That stuff is all over the place,
Yeah.
and that's the sense I get when you say
Yeah.
stuff has snuck
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
We often categorize pornography as like the thing, which is certainly is, and we need to be sober,
Mhm.
get rid of it, But then I think listeners in our culture and in the church, there's this blindness to everything else that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in our recovery journeys in our communities, that's all part of it, right? Like
Yep.
this, the lure, the thing that's trying to just catch you, which in and of itself is lust and sin and objectification, but then to reel you back in, to that addiction. So
Yeah.
let me kick it back over to you. What's
Yeah.
the recovery ongoing piece been like for you, outside of the one time, reading the book?
Yeah, well, just to comment quick on what you said, absolutely. And that's actually been almost one of the biggest freedoms on top of just no pornography. It's just my thought life has improved.
Yeah.
And this sounds weird, but I have so much more bandwidth now. I have so much more
Mm,
time to think about stuff that actually matters. Well, we all probably daydream from time to
sure.
time about stuff, but I just don't go to bed thinking about that. Because it was one thing to put pornography out of the life, but then I would still sometimes when I'm laying in bed, I'd be thinking dirty thoughts
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, that's hidden from my wife. But that's part of the journey too, is to, like you said, to really work on the thought life and the intentions and just all the stuff that's underneath. And so in the book, you did an excellent job as well. And I think just seeing the prevalence of it and how many people are struggling it and just the insidiousness of it is just it's rampant, it's evil, it's just crazy powerful. So to break that off, and then so with all of that. I mean, I meet with, I talk with some like mentors, spiritual directors. I meet in person with the BTB group. We try to meet like once a month if we can, every other month. Every week we do phone calls. I have an accountability partner that gets all my reports. I try to be very open with my wife about it. So there's a lot of layers. And I think, like you said too, those don't necessarily stop you per se, but they're great to have. And so that is kind of supplemented. And so honestly, when I think about looking at something, I really do. I'm like, if I do this, not only am I going to break this like 10-month awesome period, but I'm going to have to go report this to everybody and everyone's going to see it. And so that extra, for me at least, that extra, what's the word? Conviction really,
Hmm.
really, really helps me.
Yeah, well, and it's not being alone, right? Like
Yeah.
the when you're alone in your thoughts, like you said, laying in bed, or you're alone coming home from work, you had a bad day. That's where pornography thrives. That's where these addictions take hold. And in your head, you talked about as a teenager. By the way, your story is very similar to mine. I could relate to so many things that you said. Those prayers, God, I'm so sorry. I'm
Mm.
gonna beat this. When am I, I'm gonna beat this. I'm gonna beat this every day, praying that.
Yeah.
That's real. And we
Yeah.
meant that. But there was no way to actually beat that, like to beat the
No.
addiction, because we were trying to do it on our own. And what you just described is a whole bunch of community. You described, your phone call group, and your in-person group, and Zoom, and your wife, and your accountability reports. So you now are surrounded by, a community of others. You're not alone, and that makes all the difference. So my question is, 10 months ago, something significant happened in you where you went from, and I'm summarizing a lot of decades here, but
Yeah.
you went from the, I'm so sorry, I'm going to beat this. And it sounds like you had tried some things
Yeah.
with accountability partners and whatnot that didn't really work. But what was the switch that happened, or how did it happen in you? Because I think there's a lot of listeners who are going, yeah, that's where I'm at. Like, I'm going to beat this on my own. I've tried some things that didn't work. So why would I jump into, let's be on the battle group? Like, why would I join a group? What was the switch for you that, I don't know, or maybe what was it that allowed you to make that switch? Because that's a big change to go from
Yeah.
I'm isolated to, you know what, I'm done being isolated. I don't
Yeah.
care. I'm going into the deep end of community.
Well, I think a lot of, I mean, this is just for me personally, but a lot of things, like I said, I experienced some loss in my life. My wife and I were just in a, I remember one night I took my stuff and left. Like we had a huge argument.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of things that just built up and built up. And finally I was like, I need this for me. Like my life is not going in a good direction. And so I think it was just that ultimate, like, no, like these like halfway attempts, like no more. I'm jumping in. I'm committed to this. And so I have to say it is somewhat of a mysterious work of God, but I really do think your book and your ministry was something that I had never experienced. I didn't even know that stuff existed. Like that was, I'm like, wow, right here in kind of my own backyard, so to speak, like that there's actually this group and like that this is tangible. I can do this, and that there is like this commitment, and there is a group of people that are committed and checking on you, and that, like telling your friend, like, hey man, check out my reports on Accountable to You or CE or whatever. I mean, I hope you find a really good friend that can be honest with you, because some friends are just going to ignore that and they have their own stuff going on.
Hmm.
So, but to have that real accountability and that real community. So I think it was just this combination of all this stuff. And then I was like, wow, there's a program, there is a way to work through this.
Yeah.
Like that is awesome. And like I said, I didn't even know that existed before hearing you present it. So if that kind of helps, that really was just a really cool step of faith.
That's great to hear the work of God in that, because then let me say this to listeners, porn will always lead you to that rock bottom, to that breaking point where the whole thing is, your whole life, your whole ship is falling apart, right? We have this deception. We think, oh, it's just porn. And that's so prevalent today. If you look at the stats of porn use in the church, outside of the church, middle schoolers, high schoolers, college students, in the military, right? It's like you said, you're walking down your dorm and you're hearing it. You're hearing porn videos in, the other side of that door. Like, we have this lie from Satan that's pervaded everything, that I can just have my little porn habit and it's fine. It's normal. You kind of have to get by. Yeah. I want listeners to know that porn will always lead you to that breaking point of wreckage. It will wreck you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. It's coming, just like it did for you.
And absolutely. Just to say, it not only will it wreck you, but it will wreck your relationships, and it'll wreck your thought life. Because it's one of the biggest freedoms is, like I said, it's just the fact that I don't go around all the time fighting those thoughts, because it just that is the scariest thing, is how much it just consumes you if you let it.
Yeah. And that is freedom. So let me get you out of here on this. We have our groups, beyondthebattle.net, where guys can join. And if you're a woman out there struggling with pornography, unwanted sexual sin, check out sherecovery.com. But for listeners that, what would you say to listeners that need to join a group, but they are afraid, they have anxiety, they've never done something like this before, or what would you say to our Beyond the Battle alumni guys that might be listening? They've done a 7-week group and then they've become dormant. They're not active in our alumni community the way you are. Just as we wrap up, what encouragement would you give those that are fearful to take that next step?
Yeah, well, I mean, the group in and of itself was not a fearful thing. I mean, sometimes it's a little scary to share your story, but in the way we're doing it now with Zoom, it takes a little bit of that away. I think just some of the scariness of it. And what I would encourage is share phone numbers with each other, with the guys who you're an alumni with, and commit, do a group text and just commit to checking in on one another. I mean, really, some of these guys I've never even met in person, and I consider them kind of my friends. Like, we do life together. Like, they talk about their wives and their jobs, and we chit chat, or we text each other during the week something funny or encouraging. And so, really, I would just encourage that first step may seem scary, but really, I mean, if you really want God to do a work in your life, I mean, you got to commit it and just say, hey, no more excuses. And once you're in it, I think you'll find incredible love and grace and support. And just to continue to have that community around you is really big.
Love it. Ethan, thanks so much for sharing your story with us. And listeners, check out beyondthebattle.net. Join a group. I've experienced it myself, particularly the alumni community. We have created something collectively as a community. God has created it that is unique. I've been a pastor 21 years. I love the church. We've created something that I don't think you can quite have in the church. I think, sometimes we're afraid of those types of conversations. You jump into Beyond the Battle, and it is tailor-made for vulnerability, safety. It's a safe place, and I've just seen God work in so many ways. And so I just want to encourage listeners with that the groups are designed to be a place you can join, you can jump in, you can do exactly what you've described, Ethan, sharing your story, having community, having support. So thank you. Thanks so much for being vulnerable with your story and helping other guys and ladies out there as well get out of the darkness and step into the light of freedom.
Amen.
The Flip Side with Noah Filipiak is a Beyond Ministries production. Copyright Noah Filipiak. www.noahfilipiak.com. Theme music by Kyle Lake at K-Lake Music. Used with permission. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and subscribe wherever podcasts are found.
It's time to bring me closer. There's no purgatory, cause you're in or you're out. When you see him in the clouds, you know it's going down. Raise them, raise them, raise them. They've been sleeping for some ages. Now all God's babies so confused by this hatred. Pulpit preachers shouldn't aim to be A-list. Money probably long, but short is what your days.